So I have taken Payne's Gray and my new Gamboge, and I have made this really dark green, and I have pre-wet my paper because again I want this very soft, and I'm just adding the dark shadows from the photograph. And you see it's spreading out because it is so red. And the crab actually has a dome right here. So to kind of give that effect. And let this come on down. And I'm just kind of dabbing this with this paying attention to what I'm doing here. I'm trying to add the darks in. And again, so the paper is wet, so we're going to get a very soft marks. We're not going to get harsh marks here. I like how this is kind of bleeding down and softening. This is very harsh, this line right here, but we're going to live with it. Try to soften that a little bit. When I take off the masking fluid, we'll be able to soften that. So right now I'm just trying to get the darks in where I see them. It's very important to watch your value study and to see exactly where the darkest darks are. I'm just loosely dropping them in. And I would normally be using a round brush for this, but this one was the one I had in my hand, so that's why we're using this. I'm saving these little flippery things here because they're going to get some special attention. So we'll drop that in there. There's a line here. This is harsh over here. And you'll see we'll have to go back and do this once again when we get the masking fluid off. But I'm just building ever so gradually these areas. Just trying to get him to look a little more realistic. There's a shadow back underneath here. Putting in these shadows. There's a shadow back under here. This. And because it's wet, again, we're going to get a soft edge, not a hard edge. And then underneath his claw, there's a shadow there. And if it dries out too much, just spritz it again. Anything that's looking too harsh, just spritz it, softens it right up. Because this is a very wet painting, this is going to be really dark under here, but I'm going to do this in more of a blue than a green because I want that shadow to be a different shade. This, it's actually coming all up into here, isn't it? So just paying attention to the photograph, which is right here. And if you need to, take a screenshot of this with your phone, or take a photograph with your phone so that you can have this as a guide. Logically, there should be a shadow under here somewhere. Just get it to fade out. Put that under there. I'm just touching anywhere that I want it to be a little darker. based on my photograph and my value study. It's very dark down here. Let's put some more of that really dark. That's underneath his claw. So we'll really put that here. Dropping that in, just dabbing it in, letting it run. Kind of want it to run this way a little bit though. Maybe this way a little bit. Soften this right here. Keeping this dark up in here. His eyes are very dark. This area is an opening where his mouth is, so that's also very dark. Okay, there's a bit of a dark shadow here. And I don't want this shadow running all the way down here, so I'm just going to soften that edge with a paper towel, soften this edge with a paper towel so that all blends in nicely. Okay, but that'll be a little bit lighter there. Soften this a little bit. And to get him some texture, you can just blot his shell a little bit. Give him some texture there. That's kind of nice. Okay, I'm liking him. So we're going to dry this now. You see up in here, these little fins are quite blue. So just going to drop a little bit of blue in there to give them some interest. Catch that if it runs too far. This one is very blue. But again, we're doing this while it's wet so that there's not a harsh line. This whole leg is blue. So just use your cerulean because it's very soft. So we'll just pull these legs out, make them look a little more interesting here. Okay, catch that. All right, so I'm going to dry that, and then I'm going to remove the masking fluid, and we will see where we are. Okay, we've taken off the masking fluid, and you can see we have the harsh outlines. It did lighten the pencil marks a little bit, which is nice, but again, we have quite a dark a line that's showing way too much. So I'm going back in with a different green. Now, I'm just going back in here and soften these lines. Not in a very, let me wet this again, just to keep it soft. Keep it soft. And again, we want this dome. So now we're into direct painting here. This barnacle has some dark places in him, and his edges are pretty dark. So we'll just darken him a little bit. And I'm just going over these dark lines everywhere so they don't stand out so much. Very loosely, as you can see. Then I'm going to go back into my darker blues down here again. So we know that that's all darker in there. So basically I'm just going over the white lines here because we really don't want, it's really dark in there. Then I'm going to pick up some straight yellows and just drop them in because there's some yellow in, this is New Gamboge. And the light hits the crab in certain different areas. Just fiddle with that a little bit. Let's just soften in all of this, keeping it moist, keeping it moving, giving him some texture in his on his shell. The underside of his shell is lighter, which means we have to build the dark up here a bit. Now we're losing some of our detail, which is okay. We'll get it back in a minute. Okay. So again, doing the dark. This is very wet. Very wet in here. Tip of your brush up in here a little bit. Soften that. Just paying attention to where I see the darks. This dark comes all back up in there. There's a dark area in here. But it's so wet. There's also a shadow under here that I missed. It actually comes out kind of like that. There's a little shadow right here. And then we've got this dark shadow here. I'm still working on this, building this darker as I go. It actually comes all the way from over here, back into here, under here, and there. So let's wet that a little bit. Keep that soft. Just let it migrate. Control it if it's going someplace I don't want it to go. And a lot of people don't like masking fluid. If you don't like this look, you don't have to use the masking fluid. It's your call. It's just a good way to retain your drawing. It's very frustrating to lose your drawing because it's hard to get it back, honestly. Okay, and I want that shadow to run that way. So this, you're just doing an incredibly wet painting here. And once you realize that it's not going to go exactly like you want it to go, then you'll be fine. Otherwise, you're going to be very frustrated. I'm going to go back and lift a little bit of this shell underneath there. And this, like that. And now we have that area. Any other place I see that I need to lift, I will do that. There's going to give us that dome shape we're looking for. Right there. Actually, you can do it this way and actually get more of a dome there. Okay. Use the point of my brush here. All right. There are some highlights on this crab. I don't mind some of the white showing a bit. If you don't like that look, let it dry and then just go over it. A little bit stronger line, like this. I'm just creating these shadow effects here. See, I can pretty much cover up the lighter line if I just work on it. I kind of like it. This is too dark and too pronounced, so that's how I take care of that. All right, while it's still wet, go back in with my cerulean blue. That's a bit too strong. Soften that some. Very wet. Very wet. Very loose and wet. Add a little bit of blue to that just for fun. So I'm just touching it in. And it is loose, so it's it is wet, so it's going to be very loose. Okay. Dry him, and then I'm going to put the darkest darks in.